As always, I get inspired to do a video when I'm walking my dog. And today I wanted to talk about the taboo of talking about chi and things like Nimlik, that sort of thing, in the 70s in Australia, or in Adelaide in particular. And they say that history is always a personal interpretation. So it's probably true because it's my personal interpretation of how things went in that period of time. But for memory's sake, when I was going to Sifu Gym school, right, it was a bit of a taboo thing, especially culturally speaking, because the Chinese culture, Japanese culture wasn't really, like a lot of our cultures, wasn't really integrated well into Australia in that period of time. That we were sons of immigrants. We just got into Australia in the 60s, late 60s, and therefore, predominantly, this is again my opinion. I don't think I'm that far off the truth though. Predominantly, a lot of the religious views were Christian or Catholic, Protestant, and therefore, if we looked at things like Buddhism, Zen philosophies, Taoism, or we talked about Qi and stuff like that, I remember a lot of times, people or elderly people would really strictly look at it as something really demonic, and even at school, if you talked about Chinese philosophies or Qi and stuff like that, you were laughed at. Honestly, I remember it really well, and or even Wing Chun, it's like, what are you doing? A woman style, bloody hell, what are you? Fucking poofta, I laugh about it today, but I mean, it's just crazy. And so I even remember that maybe in the early 70s, Sifu Gym sort of talked about it occasionally, but in the 80s, it was sort of more formatted as, do Wing Chun, fitness with a purpose, and we would talk about Nim Lik as being more as thought force, and I specifically remember asking Sifu Jim, about Chi, and he goes, no, don't worry about it, it's more, thought force. We would concentrate more on thought force more so than Chi. And that's just my guess. Just to separate this, maybe paradigm of confusion that maybe people would have because of cultural differences, maybe because of religious problems and stuff like that. Because honestly, I spoke to so many people, especially even there was where I would have my schools in Australia. I would hire out religious, church halls, right? And it's like, they would sometimes ask me, like, do you practice, like, Buddhism, stuff like that? And I said, no, I just do a martial art, that sort of like, it's a Chinese martial art, but I don't actually practice it, because if I did, they wouldn't give me the hall. So that's like how serious it was. And that was even in the 90s, so go figure, right? So there's a lot to think about, I don't think maybe I'm that far off the truth. So now, if you go look at the way things are, in 2022, and you go look at the way things are advertised, on Wing Chun and what it proposes, and the internal aspects of Wing Chun, and it's like you're going into a fantastic journey of self-discovery and internal energies and stuff like that. You could never advertise anything like that in the 70s or the 80s, I mean, if one could find the old yellow pages of the 70s or the 80s and see what they were proposing, It's just very practical, very simple, and had none of that, and had none of that sort of thing that we're talking about today. And but not because it wouldn't have been taught in China. It's just it was just a way of breaking the ice, to the Western cultures. It had to be slowly broken in. Those barriers, those multicultural barriers. But I remember it well. I really remember it well. Especially with some of the deeply religious people. It was really looked at as if it was like something really satanic, and I went through that. Yep. Thought I'd share that with you as well, guys. So another thought for history, what we lived through the 70s, 80s, and some part of the 90s. So yeah, I don't know if that still happens today in your part of the world. Maybe share a thought, if you like, under the comments. All right, so have a good one.